Welcome to the Traveling Image. I'm Tony Cece, and today we're going to do something fun and look at creating composite images with your iPhone. So I've been creating these composite images now for a while, these superhero children. The parents really love them. The kids get a kick out of seeing themselves in a world that they didn't take their photo in, and their smiles come over their face when they see the images. And so I've got a lot of questions about them, but one of the fun things that I did on a recent shoot was that I created a composite photo on my iPhone. Normally I was doing these in Photoshop, but on one of these I decided to try my hand at doing it in the iPhone, and I knew I had plenty of the tools available to do it and just wanted to see how it could turn out. So while I was taking some photos on one of our family retreats that we went on, it was a family reunion, and I was getting a bunch of the cousins in to take pictures in their costumes for Halloween that we were going to make these, composites out of. Dino woke up from his nap, and I've done a bunch of them for him already, but he jumped into his costume and came down. He started throwing down all these different poses without me prompting him at all. And so I saw this shot of him here, and he was making all the sound effects of flying, and I thought this would be perfect to create a composite from. And I said, well, I wonder if I could just do this on my iPhone. And so I'm going to show you just the quick tips of what I did, starting with the different steps that it took. And so I went to freeimages.com. I picked up a background because we were traveling back home. I think we were in West Virginia at the time. We'd been in Kentucky at this reunion. And so I was up late. Everyone else was sleeping. I just pulled out my iPhone and said, I'll give this a whirl on my iPhone. Went to freeimages.com, found this graphic or this photograph of the mountains with the clouds, and I thought this would be a great shot for the Iron Man to fly above. And then I said I need something for repulsor rays, and I couldn't find anything that worked really well that was royalty free. And then I finally found this. I think it was called like Exploding Planet on that site. And so I said I can probably make this work. And so I took this into the App Union, and I'll show you what the process was really quickly. Because of time, I'm not going to go through the entire process because it would take a while to cut out everything. So I'm just going to give you a quick little overview of how the program works. So you've got a background image, a foreground image, and a mask. And so I'm going to start with the background image, which is going to be the mountain range here. And we'll say okay, and then I'll add my foreground, which is going to be the Iron Man. So here we go. We'll grab the Iron Man. And this is just go into a little bit of personal stuff right now. This is probably the 20th time I've tried doing this today, between getting text messages and interruptions that caused my iPhone to freak out while I was screencasting this. But here we are. Let's give this a go. So here's the Iron Man. We're in Union. We've got our two images. We can resize. I need to leave room, a little bit of headroom, and then room for the flames to come out. And so I kind of pre-visualized this image in my head as I was looking at all the elements. And so here I'll choose to mask, and I want to erase parts of the image. So I'll zoom in here, and with this erase tool, I can just move my hand around, and you can see it's just painting away. I'll zoom out so you can see it better. It's just painting away the image. And I'm going to go in here. I'm going to paint away his feet because those shoes aren't going to work for Iron Man. And you've got tools here. You can change your brush size, the opacity of the brush. If you want to have a hard edge to it, which I would use if I were going, say, in between the fingers here, make it a really small brush and really get in here and get a lot of detail. And so this automatically magnifies, as you can see. And so it's working above where my thumb actually is, just above it, so I can see where I'm working. And it doesn't have to be completely perfect, because what's going to happen is when I actually mask this over the mountains, if there's a little bit of a blur on the edge of it, it's going to pretty much disappear into the background, and it won't be too noticeable, especially after I add all the effects that I want to do. So it doesn't have to be too perfect. Okay, so from here, let's just pretend that I've done it all. I'm going to go in here and I would say flatten image. And by flattening it, what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to add another foreground image. which would be the flame, because I've got him already cut out, so I need to start adding more layers. So let me just add a new background that was already at that stage so you can kind of see how that works. And so then this would be what I'm working with after I've cut it out. And so I would add the foreground of the flames, which are right here. And you can twist them with using 2 fingers on the screen and resize them. One of the things you can do here is change the opacity to kind of get an idea of where you are and what size you want it to be, and then take it all the way back up. And then we're going to add another mask. And so we'd come in here, and I think I can quickly get rid of most of this to a believable point, so you can kind of see where we're at with the image when it's ready. All right, so I think that's most of it. So there we've got the flames. If I go back into the foreground, I can then kind of blow that up a little bit. And that's close enough for what we're doing here. And so I'm going to flatten this again, because what I need to do is I need to add more foreground images. And what I'm going to do is go back to that same image, and I'm going to use that on his hands. But one of the tricks is I didn't have the ability to go and get a bunch of images that are flames. And so what I did was I went ahead and I just masked this. And when I did, I just cut it out a little bit different so that it would take on a little bit different shape, be maybe a little bit smaller than the other one. And what this is going to allow me to do as well is that I can have 2 different types of flames for each of the hands. All right, so that's good. We're going to go back to this. We'll blow it up a little. You can see I've still got a little bit of the black over there, but I'll deal with that in a little bit. So add this over and call that good. What I actually had done when I was doing it was, I'll go back to the mask. I'd turn the opacity down on the brush, and I kind of painted where his hands were, so you'd get a little bit of, you can actually draw back on the image if you do too much, so you can get a little bit of the fingers in there. And then up here is where I had some of that black hanging on. There's a little bit too much there. And so we'll call that good. We'll flatten it. And what I do is then I would take it and I would do the other, add another foreground image and do the other hand. So let me just pop back out here. I can kind of flip through the stages of how that all went. So let's go back to widescreen here. So here it is after I cut out the first part. His legs are gone. His hands are still just normal to just his feet. And then I went back in and I added flames to his hands. And then one of the things you'll notice is the colors don't match very well between the foreground and background. It looks like a cutout on top of this mountain picture. It looks like multiple different elements. And one of the ways you can cheat that is to use a coloring effect and to make all the colors match, or the tonal display of the colors to match a little bit more. And so I took it in and I started working with the coloring and started making it all look a little bit vintage, so it all looked like it had been shot with the same camera. Let me see here. These aren't really rotating in order like they should be. And so then I got the coloring exactly how I wanted it. I liked this. And so then I just added a whole bunch of light flares because it felt like he was flying really fast in the air. And maybe it's a sonic boom visually, you would see light. I don't know. I was trying to make it feel like that. And so all of that was done inside of, I started in Snapseed to do the coloring, and then I went to an old favorite here called Photo Effects. And Photo Effects, I'll just quickly show you some of the tools that they have in here. So I'll find, I think this one doesn't have any of the light applied to it already. And underneath these settings, there's a light effects, and you can add these ice halos, they call them, or light breakups. They've got lights from windows and a whole bunch of other things. And so what I did is I just went into these halos, and I started adding these lights to it. And you can go in at the bottom, you can tap, and you can resize it, choose where you want it to fall. And so I just kind of created from here kind of this effect of that light boom. It's probably something more like this. And so there you have it. That's all I did from here. Once I'm happy with that, I would just close out of it, save the image, and we're good to go. And let me just show you again one more time. I actually added like a softening filter to it. I wanted it to still kind of have a little bit of that vintage feel. And so there's the image, all done on an iPhone. And like you saw the original image, it wasn't anything spectacular. But I knew what I was going to be doing. I had kind of a vision for what images I was trying to create and knew that I was going to be cutting them out and doing some composite work with them. And this one is the first one of these superhero series that I've done on an iPhone. And it's a whole lot of fun to do, and you can do it while you're out and about. And it took me 30 minutes to do this completely. Cutting them out around the fingers and all that was a bit of a pain. And it didn't need to be, as I ended up covering up his hands anyway. So I could have saved probably 10 minutes right there. But there you have it. And I hope that you take some of these tips and you start creating some awesome stuff as well.